throughout most of my education, especially in high school, elementary school, middle school, I needed tutoring in summer school. So those are all like tools there to help me because I learned differently, kind of like how you said in my podcast, is that you learn differently and that's okay.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Different Ability Podcast. I am Katie Fortune and I am so honored to have Paul Vibes on today as my amazing guest. And if you are listening to this and want to actually physically see this amazingness and his studio and who he is, head on over to my YouTube channel. It'll be on Motivation Moment as well. So, Paul, welcome to the Different Ability Podcast. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I feel like we've been spoiled. Yesterday you were on my podcast. Now I have the privilege to be on yours. And it just shows you like the cool things that can happen when you put yourself out there and you connect with people. So I'm very grateful that the universe and our paths crossed.
I agree 1,000,000%. And it feels like we've been hanging out for a long time now because we were just last night on your podcast and it was so awesome. And we'll talk more about that if everyone's like, oh, Paul has a podcast, I want to listen. You will. Don't worry, because we're going to get into that as well. It was so fun. And the content he brings all over the place is incredible. And I just cannot wait to hear more about your story. So, Paul, let's get into this. Tell me a little bit about yourself. How were you as a kid? I want people that have no idea who you are to know a little bit more about you. So tell us a little bit about, how did you grow up? Where are you from? Those types of things. And we'll get into some more nitty gritty details here too.
Good question. For that question, we got to go all the way back, 1993. So for me, and I think we've talked about this in the past a few times, is that for me, my journey really started at a young age because I was choked by the umbilical cord and the doctors told my parents didn't think I was going to make it due to the complications. But knock on wood, luckily I have a wood table here. I survived with very minor brain damage, but it was enough to give me a little bit of a delay in learning. So I had an IEP. I wasn't diagnosed with autism or anything like that, but I was diagnosed with a learning disability. And what that meant for me was I needed things like extra time on tests. I needed separate location. I needed in some classes to have an assistant there. Throughout most of my education, especially in high school, elementary school, middle school, I needed tutoring in summer school. So those are all like tools there to help me because I learned differently, kind of like how you said in my podcast, is that you learn differently and that's okay. So for me at an early age, as you can imagine, that really affected the way I viewed myself, my confidence, the way that others viewed me. And it definitely added to the bullying that was done to me in school. And for me, the real pivotal moment, the real moment that really changed everything, I think really set the foundation to doing what I do here now, was actually volunteer work. And I remember it was about 10th or 9th grade. I was sitting there with a veteran at the VA hospital here in Long Island, New York. And I remember sitting there and I was just listening to him. I wasn't doing anything fancy. It's like I was playing a board game, or it was just talking to him. And I remember in that moment, just by holding space and listening to him, I was able to make an impact on his life. And it was in that moment I realized that no matter what my challenges are, your challenges are, whatever anybody is going through, whether it's issues with finances or their way that they learn or the color of their skin or their sexuality, that each one of us has the ability to make an impact on someone's life, no matter what challenges we are going through. So soon after that volunteer experience, I started volunteering even more and getting involved in leadership positions and just getting really involved in school. So that was like the first chapter, is really volunteer work, taking care of myself more. I started, my confidence started to go up. The people that once bullied me all of a sudden stopped bullying me. And as I mentioned to you yesterday on my podcast, that I realized that the people that hurt other people are often hurt, right? So they're going through something. So that was the first chapter in my life that really, like I said, put me on this path that I'm on now.
Wow, Paul, I had no idea that the umbilical cord story. I had no
Yeah.
idea. And that is very real. And a lot of people, I mean, I don't know very many, but I'm assuming many people have maybe a little bit of similarity stories like that way, but at least like that was at birth. And that is a scary thing. Obviously, you were a baby, but that had to have been terrifying for your parents as well. And we talked about it already, again, on your podcast, but having, the wonderful parents you do have, which we'll talk about,
Yes.
but just their story within yours too. Like, you obviously when you were young, like your first memories obviously were not when you were a baby and born, but your parents went back to that day. They knew how scary that was. And so that is really that is a really incredible story. And I love that the way that pivotal moment for you was through volunteering. And
Yeah.
that is such a great message for people. And like, and I love when you said this, and it's interesting because you said this last night and it happened to me today, which I believe in things like this. But when you said last night, the whole people that are hurt others sometimes, not always, sometimes. Someone said that today and something I was listening to or whatever. And I was like, Paul just said that the other night. Like, I was like, I'm thinking this. I'm like, oh, it's so interesting how
Very
things come out.
synchronistic.
It's so weird. And I like loved it though, because it hit me again. And I'm like, wow, that's so true. And so, do you mind chatting a little bit about like instances that you remember? Doesn't have to get into all the details if you don't want to, of like an experience that you were teased or bullied, and how did you personally handle that? Like, how did you feel in those situations? Because it happens to a lot of kids. And I feel that if we can chat about our stories of being teased and bullied and whatever else it may be, maybe that can help someone else learn and grow confidence to stand up for themselves as
Yeah.
well.
That's a good question. I definitely agree. I think that our stories can be used in a positive way to inspire others to speak up and to share and to connect with others. One of the stories for me that really stands out, it comes from a lot of anger, right? Like I remember a lot of different instances. The one similarity I remember is these kids, you can tell that they had stuff going on at home. It was pretty obvious that they weren't being taken care of right. They didn't come from the best household and they had a lot of anger, right? They had like a chip on their shoulder and they were just looking at for a way to let it out. And I think one of the reasons why they looked at me at the time when I was bullied is I didn't have that confidence. I didn't stand up for myself. I didn't, they thought probably like, oh, what is he going to do? Right. And remember what I said, as soon as I started taking care of myself, working out, meditating, volunteering, getting involved in leadership positions, when I started taking care of these aspects of my life, I think they knew that they couldn't get to me anymore. Right. And I could see the anger and the pain that they were going through. And like I said to you the other day, it doesn't make, like we said, it's not an excuse. There's never an excuse to hurt other people and to abuse or to bully others. But I soon realized by connecting with them and hearing stories that a lot of them were going through a lot of serious stuff behind the scenes, a lot of mental health challenges, a lot of other stuff that were due to many different factors. But as I said, as soon as I started taking care of my life in different aspects and actually started standing up for other kids too, it wasn't just that I wasn't bullied anymore. I went a step further and I was like, you know what? I want to stand up for other kids. Those kids that are sitting alone at the cafeteria, that waits in the commons alone in the morning and no one talks to them. And it was amazing because I would do those things without expecting anything in return or anybody to notice. And I remember one day my dad came up to me and after school, he's like, one of the APs called today. And I'm like, uh-oh, who likes to hear that someone from the school called? And he just mentioned that the teachers or people in the school were noticing that you were checking in and talking to kids, certain kids that they were keeping an eye on. And they said they really appreciated that. And it was moments like that. I was like, wow, like it just shows you how, you do good things and there are people that are watching and that notice and that appreciate the good deeds, even though in the moment it seems like such a small gesture, whether it's, smiling at that kid standing, by himself. I'm gonna get emotional now. I don't have any tissues near me. Whether it's, just talking to that kid alone at the cafeteria or, after school when the kid waits for the bus, that doesn't have many friends, just asking how their day is going. Those little things go a long way. And I think that we definitely need that in today's world more than ever.
I think that is, oh my gosh, I have chills. Uh, I'm totally emotional over here as well. I'm like, keep it together, Katie. You have to interview this guy.
I know. What advice I got? I'm gonna lose my
No,
shirt.
it's good. It's all good. It's absolutely amazing because that is such a great way to put that. Many people do get teased and bullied. And in my perfect world, which I'm going to strive for every day, is that there's no such thing because we're all celebrating our differences, right? But there are going to be situations in whether it's in kids' lives or even adults' lives that you can tell if you I was told once, and this is something I don't like being told. I found out I'm an Enneagram 8 and I don't like being told what to do. It all makes sense. My life makes sense now. So I was told once at an old job that, Katie, you just need to put your head down, mind your own business, and just get the work done. And I had such a terrible feeling from that. It first was really like just felt dirty. Like, no. But secondly, my saying is pick your head up, look around you, and see what's going on in the world. Because you could be walking down the street and you could see someone that you can just tell on their face they're having a tough day. And they may not be, but you smiling at them, saying hi, could absolutely change and probably will change their entire day. And
Absolutely.
like our friend Janet says, be the drip that rips, that little ripple effect, right?
We're dripping. We're making moves. We're
Yes.
making ripples.
But
There's one story I do want to share if it's okay, if you don't mind. And it relates to what we're talking about. So through that volunteer work, I got really into working with the special needs population, as you know, and I created a non-for-profit. I don't know if you know this, for the special needs community soon after I graduated high school. And we would do things like going out to eat, go to the movies, go bowling, martial arts, and then just a lot of simple things, hanging out at the park, going for a walk, getting food, right?
yeah.
And it went from Northport Buddy Club to the Long Island Buddy Club, and then we merged with another organization, another grassroots organization. And the point that I'm getting across is that we never know how we're going to impact individuals, right? Like we mentioned, making an impact on young adults in high school, whether they're sitting alone or just making an impact on students that want connection. There was a really interesting, another tearjerker, but it really, I think, brings home that point of connection. And it happened when a mom came up to me after one of these buddy events. We call them buddy events because there's just, we're all buddies. We're all here making friends. And the mom came up to me and her son has only, at that point, only went to about 3 or 4 events. So he was pretty new. But the mom came up to me and she said, Paul, you don't know how much of an impact these events have made on my son. Before, he was talking about how he had no friends and that no one liked him, and how he was it was affecting his school because he wouldn't have motivation to get through school because he didn't have anything to look forward to for the weekend or after. And he's like, since he's been coming to these events, he's been doing better in school. He's been happier. And then the mom shared, and I'm not sharing any names, so it's okay to talk about, but the mom said, my son was very depressed to the point where he would have, suicidal thoughts and depression and anxiety. And this was somebody who had so much stuff going on behind the scenes. He had learning challenges, he had different abilities and challenges in his life. And to hear that from the mom, I was taken back because I didn't realize how much of an impact these social events were making on his life. And I was like, oh my God. I said, if that's not a message from the universe that you're on the right path, I don't know what else is. Because, we turn on the news, we watch things, we look on our news on the phone and the TV. There's so much negative things going on. It's easy to go down that depressing cycle, right?
Yes.
So when we can find these little things, it doesn't need to be you don't need to start a non-for-profit. You don't need to go around opening doors for everybody you see, but it's the little things that make the biggest impact. Those little drops every day. You may not be a tidal wave of change every day, but we can, as Janet says, make those little drips and the ripples, right? So for me, doing those events and even the small things, like they all add up, and you never know how it's going to impact, someone's life.
And I have so many chills. I'm just going to be cold the entire time. Like, you're so right though. And we may never know that it actually affects certain people. People don't all come to us and say, "Wow, that was so impactful." But they went home and felt good about themselves and felt confident. Like, for a while, like, people ask like, "Oh, how many likes do you have on your videos?" And they're all really kind about it.
Who
Yes.
cares?
Well, I have to say the one is because this person, I love him. It's my dad. He doesn't go on social media. He doesn't get all that stuff. But I said, Dad, and he is only doing it because he's so proud. Like, oh, are people watching? Like, he gets excited, right? And I said, Dad, it doesn't matter. And he's doing it out of love again. I have to say that. I'm like, Dad, it doesn't matter to me if I can impact one person. And the point behind that whole thing for me is yeah, not everyone likes everything you do, right? This is a message for all kids to listen to. Just because you don't have all these likes and shares and comments doesn't mean you aren't impacting people. Because months later, this is a perfect example. I was on the phone with an old coworker of mine from years ago, and she was going through a tough time. And she said, Katie, I have to tell you, I appreciate your videos every Monday because they bring light into my life for my
Yes.
Mondays. And I was in a public place sitting and talking to her, crying because I didn't realize. And those are the messages. And that warms your heart when you find out about it. But think about how many other people are like her that don't actually say things or don't say things at all. And that's okay.
And what's amazing, you don't realize people might be watching that aren't commenting, liking, and sharing. And I'm sure some of you've had this too, because I've had times where I've had people when I'm out in the community doing my errands or working, whatever, that come up to me. Oh, I love that episode where you interviewed blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you watch my podcast? What the heck you do? Wait, where'd you come from? And they're like so passionate about it. And I'm like, it just shows you how we think that everything's a surface level. Everything that we see is what is the reality, right? In life, like anything you see. Okay, so if I got 5 likes, that means only 5 people looked at it. No. Some people like your dad aren't tech savvy, right? They're not going to like and share and make a post about it. But there's people that were impacting and like doing these little things each day. You're not going to read in the newspaper that Paul Vibes did. It's not about that. It's about doing good because you want to do good without expecting.
Without all that credit. And I think that's what's so important, specifically now, because we do look at social media so much, right? And I can't imagine, Paul. I know you're younger than me. Okay, let's be real. Okay, you are.
Not much.
Yeah, I mean you are. Not too much, but you are a little bit. But I didn't grow up I didn't get Facebook until I was in college. I was a senior in high school is when Facebook allowed me. And it was because one of my friends at the time pretended I was in college because you had to have a college
that was early on. That was back in the day.
Yeah. So I was on Facebook. Like, again, it was right after high school, I think, going into college. I think that's how it worked. And I can't imagine growing up as a kid right now. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I can't imagine seeing all of these like people liking it and sharing it and not doing it and this and that and all that stuff. And social media is your highlight reel usually. But I love when people are out there being real and honest, like, hey, I'm having a tough day today, but I'm going to kick it. I'm going to do good, having those conversations, spreading joy, because you're right. There is way too much negativity in the world. And that's what we are here for. My friend Paul and me and all the other people that we surround ourselves with is to bring more positivity and hope for others, because kids now and all kids in general and for the rest of our lives and on after us are going to need these things to learn and help themselves grow. So
it's so true. And you mentioned vibes and I would like to share that people always ask me, I think it's something to share. People probably watch this, so why are you called Paul Vibes? And why do you got this side that says Paul Vibes? Well, the whole Paul Vibes, they actually came from that non-for-profit I was telling you about. So I'd plan these events and do all these things. And I made the decision once, 2 summers ago, I knew that I wanted to go to school for social work at Adelphi. I love social work. All my mentors, the mentor that facilitated the volunteer work that I told you about earlier was also a social worker. And I knew that was the path I wanted to go on. So I already had my associates at that point. I'm a certified substance abuse counselor as well. But I made the tough decision. I had to, because I knew if I wanted to go to school full time and navigate having a learning disability in school and all the other things, also having a son, as you know. So for me, I had to make the tough decision to merge with another organization because, as you know, it's collaboration over competition. And
Yes.
it wasn't something I was making money. It wasn't something I was trying to get paid for. It was something I was trying to do to make an impact. So I merged with the organization, and it was the best decision I made because now we're able to make a bigger impact on the community. And the Paul Vibes came soon after that because I was like, I love connecting with people like you. I love networking. I love hearing people's story. So I was like, how cool would it be to host it in my house?
Yes.
Got to get permission from my family, of course. I got that, luckily.
Yeah.
I was like, how cool would it be to connect with people on the topics of wellness, spirituality, self-development? And around the same time, can you imagine starting school, also being on the board of the other organization, deciding to starting a podcast. And that's what I did. I started calling people up. I had a friend that's a feng shui master. I have a friend that does woodwork, all this woodwork, the necklace, the table you see, these shelves, even those hats. It takes a village. Even my website is built by a friend, and it's collaboration. It's coming together, right? Because you and I, we couldn't do this all by ourselves, right? You don't know how to build the webcams. I don't know how to build a computer, you know, the computer components. It takes a village, right? You know, we didn't invent Zoom where we're recording this, right? So it takes so many people. And I think for me to tie in the learning disability, it taught me at a young age to be able to seek support, seek help, not be afraid to ask questions, not be afraid to delegate, because we can do so much on this earth when we're not afraid to say, hey, can you give me a hand with this? Or can I support you with this? So the podcast really came together, and the Paul Vibes, that's what I go as, Paul Vibes, is because I kept hearing that through the buddy club. Hey, you got good vibes. And, you know, vibes is a popular word. So I was like, Paul Vibes. And it's really taken a life of its own. And people know me as that. But the podcast is called The People's Podcast. And like I mentioned, we interview amazing guests like yourself. We had you on yesterday. I'm excited to release that. And if people watching this one, definitely check out where I interviewed
I'll have all the info below because, again, like we're connecting with each other. We're helping each other out. There's no competition here. Paul and I are going to be doing lots of things in the future together because we have a lot of collaborating to do. We've already known that.
Absolutely.
Because our stories are actually not that similar, but they are. You know what I mean? Like we both have great stories. I mean, they are similar, but not anywhere near because you have so many different stories than I do. And there are going to be people that may like me, but there are going to be people that like you. And they're like, yeah, Katie's cool, but Paul Vibes, I need to connect with this guy. And that's something that it's so important to me is to let people connect with other people. That's why we do what we're doing, right, Paul? Like it's to connect other people and to make sure that these kids that are growing up have the support around them, me, you, and all the other wonderful people that are doing what we're doing, because we are not in this alone, like you said. It takes a tribe. They say that all the time. I never really understood it until I got older. And I'm like, it does take a tribe. People think I do all this stuff by myself.
You don't?
I don't. No.
You know, there's something else I want to say about tribe. You know what also is a good saying about tribe? Your vibe attracts your tribe. And I think that's why we vibe, and we're part of a similar tribe now because we're doing a lot of stuff together. And that's so true. You know, if people are wondering why there's so much negativity around them, bad influences, bad role models, check out your tribe and check out your tribe, a vibe and your tribe. You want to check out the energy that's around you, right? The people you're hanging out with, the tribe of the people and community members you're hanging out with. You want to make sure you're putting people around yourself that's positive, and you also want to make sure that you're putting out that good energy because you don't want to affect somebody in a negative way, right? Mm-hmm. And that's why one thing I would love to talk about, if you're okay, is self-care, right? Like that is something that is not talked about enough, especially with young adults, especially with, I mean, suicide rates are going up, depression is going up. And I'm not saying that to be negative. I'm saying that because we need to realize that this isn't something that we can sweep under the rug. We need to talk about this stuff. There is a sense of disconnect. And that's why another reason why I feel like you and I do this stuff, because we want to share good stories. We want to share something that uplifts people. And the one thing I want to say, if you don't mind, is that the people watching this might look at you and I as, oh my God, they do podcasts. That seems so far reach. I can't, I don't know if I could do that. I believe that everybody has a story and that everybody can inspire somebody else, right?
Mm-hmm.
So even when I'm giving a talk at a school, because I'm also a speaker and I know you are as well, my philosophy is everybody in the audience is passionate about different things usually, right? They have different stories, different challenges. Not everyone's going to be able to relate to your story of overcoming your disability or my overcoming my disabilities, but they have their own story. And I feel like that story can be used to make an impact on someone else's life. So that's something I always try to instill in the people that I connect with.
You're right. And stories connect. And that's the thing for me is I had a situation once. It's not really a situation. That's a terrible way to say it. But I was speaking at an event once, and I tell this story often because it really impacted me. And I actually just reconnected with this person. So I did, it was for a leadership conference. It wasn't even two kids with, quote, disabilities or different abilities per se. But I told my story. I told a little bit about my story, what I was doing, being an interior designer at the time. And then I was selling commercial furniture and designing big spaces, telling all these things. I was telling stories, honestly. That's how I speak. I don't have a prepared piece of paper. I'm like, what are we going to talk about today, friends?
No script here. We both got no scripts.
No, none of that. None of that. I can't. I mean, I'm dyslexic. I don't want to read a script. Are you kidding me?
I make a sound word. It wouldn't be very good, right?
Terrible. So, anyways, after I spoke, I'm like, yeah, I'll be up here for a little bit if anyone wants to chat. This girl comes out of the audience straight up to me and she smiles at me and said, Katie, this was so amazing. Your story is just like mine. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? She goes, I have a learning disability. I want to go to school for being an interior designer. And she just kept going on and on. I'm like, again, I'm not normally a crier, but I had tears.
Now you're giving me the chills.
I know. And I'm like, for me, it was almost like someone, I have all stories about this on other dates and times because this is your podcast today here, but
we're in this together.
It was like someone was telling me, keep telling your stories. And I actually just connected with her. She reached out. It was right before the new year, and she had mentioned that her disability services teacher in high school had passed away. And she wanted to talk, and we talked for like an hour or more. I was actually going to the grocery store when I called her back. I drove around town for that amount of time. I just drove and just kept driving because I wanted to keep talking to her. But 3-4 years later, we still connected, and just simple stories like that can connect people and make people feel like I'm not alone. And I feel like that's what you do such a good job at, Paul. You talk about your stories. You are very vulnerable. You say the things that you've been feeling and things like that. And people can connect with that because they're like, he's real. He's not being fake. And that's what's so incredible about you and what you're doing and everything you're passionate about and going into social work. I mean, think about it. A kid could have a very similar story to you and say, and listen to me like, wow, okay. And then you say, you know what? I'm going to college and I'm getting my blah, blah, blah in social work and whatever it is. And they're like, wait, Paul did that? That means I can. Like, it gives them that permission to know that they can do it too. And that's what stories do. At least in my eyes, that's what stories do, is connect people. And so I do want to touch back on this because we kind of skimmed over this a little bit. You brought it up. Can you tell me a story about how self-care has changed your life? How has it helped you? Give me anything, any kind of story that because people can connect with, because it is true. Like, what's that saying? It's like,
you can't help others if you don't help yourself. I mean,
that too. There's something about like a glass half empty or full.
Yes,
I don't remember.
And this is an important topic. I'd love to go deeper into it because we could do a whole segment on this.
We should.
Every one of these topics we could talk about. So if people want to hear more about that, let us know and we can have conversations about it. But for me, I know that I have a lot going on. Like, we both have a lot going on in our lives. We're doers. We like to commit. We like to take on new projects. And I notice such a big difference when I'm not meditating or exercising or being in nature, how much more drained and burnt out I get. And it's a big thing in the social work field too. And as you know, I'm going to school for social work at Adelphi, that when you're sitting there and you're taking on the energy of the other person, right? Like that girl that was a young girl that called you, right?
Yep.
If she called you and you were having a bad day or you were not in the mood, she would feel that energy and she would be maybe even hurt from it because she could tell that you would be up,
Yep.
tense and you're rushing her on the phone, but instead you took the time to speak to her. And I think that when you're on top of your self-care and you treat yourself well, you're able to help others better. So right now I'm juggling. I just started school this week. I'm doing podcasts. I got my son. I know that I need to lock in those times of self-care. And for me, that looks like I like my power naps. I like drinking a lot of water. I like drinking my juice, my smoothies. I like meditating. I don't do it enough, but I do enjoy it and I do it. But we all could use more meditation.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy being outside. I enjoy being around good people like yourself, eating healthy, exercising. These are all things. Traveling is a big thing that I get pleasure from. I love exploring new places, even if it's on Long Island where I live, just going to new places, new trails. And I love connecting. I will go up. You should see me. And some days I'll connect with 10 new people just waiting online or at the grocery store or through social media. So it's about really taking, even making a list. What are the things that you enjoy that are benefiting you? That doesn't mean you don't write out there going, getting drunk, going to McDonald's. Those things all feel good in the moment, but as you know, like it doesn't pay off, right?
No.
So I I'm a big believer in self-care. And I think we all need more of it.
You're so right. And again, no one's perfect. We have our good days and
We
bad
all
days.
have our good days. Listen, we all need to stop at McDonald's once in a while.
Yeah.
No judgment here. Anybody
No.
watching this that does a little something, listen, we're all human,
Yes. But the fact of the matter is and I even recently, I'm like, man, I feel so much better when I work out. Why don't I just keep doing that? And then there's days I'm like, I got 0 sleep last night because I had a nightmare. So I need to sleep in. And that's okay too. But here's the thing. When you were
Listen to your body.
speaking, I had the craziest idea. I'm putting this on this podcast, putting it out to the world. You do not have to say yes. But when this COVID stuff is over as it can be, and we can travel, I think I need to come out to New York. We need to go to Central Park. We need to get a camera crew, and we're going to go meet new people together and connect.
I'm in.
Wouldn't that be so fun? Like I think I can see you being the same person like me. Like I could go sit on a bench with an old man or a woman and sit and listen to their stories all day. Like I really could, because I love connecting with people so much and I love stories. And I say old man or woman because I was telling someone yesterday that like kids are really fun because I love how they talk, at you and like the funny stories they have. But I'm like, I love kids. Don't get me wrong. Middle, like our ages and then middle age, that's cool. But old people are the best in my eyes.
That's how I started my journey with volunteer work. Is just
the veteran.
So much.
Yes. Okay. So we're putting it out there. So when things get a little bit better, I'm going to New York, everyone. Paul and I are going to hang out and we're going to go see the sights. So again, we could talk all day and we're going to do more segments, I think, because we have a lot more to share. But is there something you want to leave everyone with as a message? We've talked about so many good things here and you have so many great stories to share. And I appreciate everything you've already shared.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
So what is something you'd like to leave as just a message for people? And then we will get into, so we're not leaving here. I want everyone to know where they can find you and follow you and do all the you're doing great reels lately and all these great things.
You're going to find us in Central Park. That's where they can find us.
Yes. Yeah, that too. So what message would you like to leave with people today?
I think you could agree. There's so much that we could say. There's so much words that we could put together that make something that sounds motivating and exciting. But I've been learning more and more as I go. There's simple. Yep. And one of the biggest things I think that's so important in our society is we put so much pressure on ourselves. And I think, just being easy on ourselves is such an important practice, enjoying the little victories. We sometimes look at social media and other people's lives and compare ourselves. And like they say, we can often be our worst critic, our own worst critic. So for me, my advice would be, and this is a reminder for myself, for you, to other people, is to try not to be so hard on yourself, because all we have is the present, right? The past happened, it's gone. The future happens, it happens in the present moment. And when we have that sense of just being present and being grateful and being open to the present moment, beautiful things come into our lives. But if we're constantly judging ourselves and critiquing ourselves all the time, we're stuck in our heads, and we can't be present with each other. We're not in the mood to smile at that person walking by us because we're such in our heads. And our society, as you know, is kind of built like that. It's always rushing and running around, and you're always late, and you're always. So my little snippet of motivation is to be less hard on yourself, and I think everybody could benefit from that.
I love that. That is so good. I love the simplicity. I love right to the point, and I love that because it's something that we can all work on, right? Everyone can. We all can work on ourselves and not be so hard on ourselves. Thank you so much for that information. I'm going to go do that after this and not be so hard on myself to get all these other things done.
You do an awesome job. You're doing a lot of great stuff. And you mentioned being inspired by people's stories, and I love your content. I love your little motivational videos you post on YouTube, really high quality. So you inspire me to keep creating as well. Hope you know that.
I appreciate you saying that. Thank you so much. But who wouldn't be inspired by the space you're sitting in right now? I mean, okay, if anyone's listening to this on the podcast, actually listening, I really highly suggest you go over to YouTube and check out this guy's awesome studio. I'm an interior designer, Paul, okay? Like, I know good spaces, and this space screams you, and I love it.
Thank you. You're welcome anytime. When you're in New York, you're welcome anytime. You and Janet.
I know, we already talked about it, Janet, and we've already said we have to get to Paul's studio and get in this sweet space. And yes, it'll be great. So before we leave here, Paul, how can people find you? And not literally stalk you, find you, social media, follow you?
My address is blah, 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 social security number, blood type, bank account numbers. No, for real though, I'm most active on Instagram. It's Paul Vibes _ You can't miss it. It's this logo here. And YouTube, I post a lot of my podcasts on there. And what's really exciting in the coming weeks, by the time this is uploaded, I'm sure I'll have a lot of progress. I'm going to be putting even my old episodes finally on Spotify, iTunes, Apple, all those platforms. So you can find me on there as well. And I also have a website. If people want to learn more about my podcast, my coaching, I do coaching with a diverse community, diverse learning community, everybody. I give coaching to young adults in high school and college on many different topics, but I also give talks in the community, and they can find more about that at paulvibes.com. So
Paul, we'll be standing on stages together speaking in the future. I just want you to know that.
I would love that. We should create an event once things clear up, or maybe we should create maybe a virtual event. We'll talk.
We'll be doing that first virtual just because we have to, but then we have some big things I have some big dreams over here. I have a whole wall of dreams. So you'll be on that stage, and we'll be talking together and creating these amazing events for people to come and check out. And after COVID and we're all safe and we can actually go out and spend time together, that we can all spend time together, and it'll be really fun. So
I'm excited.
Thank you so much for being here. And everything you just heard will be linked everywhere. I'm going to have a bunch of different things, so you guys will have no problem finding my new friend, forever friend, Paul Vibes.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Yes, you have such a wonderful night, and we will be chatting very soon. So no worries. See you, Paul.
See you soon.
Bye.
Doing a little pre-show video. Say hi.
Hey.
I'm excited to be on your show.
Woohoo! Yes.
Sorry, I should have warned you.
No, that's fine. I love it.